Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Thursday sessions in partnership with D&AD, presenting their awards and different categories that we've covered for the past couple of weeks. So we're back, obviously, at 10 a.m. UK time. And today we're joined by Sara Dunlop, who's joining us to present the direction category and president.
Hello there. Hi, everyone.
So you're based in London. You were just telling us that you're in East London, and we had a little chat before the session about the current situation and things opening up again. So we're really grateful to have you. And hopefully everyone tuning in on Behance and YouTube is taking the day today to ask some questions, catch up on the awards and the different pencils that have been awarded as part of the D&AD initiative that we're presenting. It's been really great having different guests over the past couple of weeks, but I'm really excited for this session. I caught up on all the videos that you shared, Sarah, and the submission. I think there's some great work that we're going to be covering today. But tell us a little bit more about the direction category first and yourself. Direction is described as a category that recognizes exceptional commercial design, direction for commercial design, advertising projects, and craft that brings a creative idea to life. Tell us more about yourself, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm a director, and I've been directing commercials for quite a long time. So it was an honour to be asked to be the president this year on this jury. And yeah, celebrate kind of craft in direction, because direction for me is about controlling many elements to service an idea or to bring an idea to life, and when they all work together seamlessly, then that's something quite special. And just watching the best work out there is always kind of a bit of a kick up the arse too. So it's good. Really enjoyed it.
And so there's a couple of things that have been mentioned when I did a bit of background research. Some of the things are your gift for narrative storytelling and a passion for bringing that to life through your work. I'm probably sure you get asked a lot about some, projects you've had and work around Dreamland, for example, which was the only UK short to be in competition at the Cannes Film Festival of 2016. But I also want to cover some of your work that hasn't been talked about as much. Some of spots for children's charity Barnardo's really stood out for me as well. So can you tell me a bit more and everyone watching as well on some of this work you've done in the past?
Yeah, I mean, my passion is kind of narrative storytelling, short, medium length, long, whatever. And not to say that I'm not kind of wowed by some of the technical prowess in some of the work this year, but yeah, for me, I like to intrigue an audience with a story, like pull them in, and then somehow I feel like work is powerful when you hide the message and you let it kind of reveal itself subtly, so that by the end that's clear. And yeah, I have a kind of I've always been attracted to work in the kind of which has a bit of a social conscience. Sometimes that balance in advertising is a difficult one to strike, but so something like Bernardo's was that was like a dream project really, to fuse the idea of the positive future with the past, where these young people come from, and try to kind of say something about how Bernardo's helps move. You don't need to have your dreams crushed if you had a bad start, with a bit of help. And it's a really simple metaphor, I think, in those films that I think works really well. Well, that I'm hypercritical, but that was one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite other projects, actually. Yeah, and Dreamland.
For you to say that, for you to say that about as a hypercritical means quite a lot, and I definitely recommend. I'm not sure if we'll share it in the chat or if Rufus can do that, but the Barnardo's series of work was really one that gripped me. So I definitely recommend everyone to watch that.
Thank you.
And you were starting to talk about Dreamlands as well. Tell us more.
Yeah, Dreamlands was the start of remembering that I'm interested in longer form, and so yeah, starting to get kind of more into that area. Personal projects are always like, you know, they're almost they're the best of times and the worst of times, because you know you can't hide behind anyone else. You only have yourself, you know, and your budget restricted, so you're just on the edge all the time. But in the end, you're doing something which is very pure, which is just that, you know, just telling a story for the power of that. And I felt like I had something to say in that film, which is about kind of the difference between sex and intimacy, and I feel like it kind of did that, you know, and it was an experience to go to Cannes and start to get into that whole, you know, slightly different world. Yeah, it was.
Tell us a bit more about the story. And
Yeah, the story is about, and really in the end, it's a bit of an old-fashioned love story. Really, it's about, you know, a girl kind of battling with her image of wanting to be sexually kind of independent and own that status in the same way that young boys can, but then having these feelings for this other boy kind of throw her off, and starts feeling like there might be something more. And it's just about that, you know. It's there's a short way of kind of pitching it, which is kind of, you know, the idea actually came from, I wrote the idea like for a music video. It was kind of this is going to sound like, I don't know whether this will make people want to watch it or put people off, but dogging for teenagers, which kind of like other audience might not get as well, because dogging's not a British thing, but yeah, that was a flippant thing to think, but actually, when you kind of develop that idea into something about the way teenagers are now, it becomes more serious, and that's an area just kind of that's led me on to doing developing a film about teenagers. Yeah, you know, a feature length film, and I'm still kind of like, you know, kind of in that world, which seems ridiculous for someone my age, but you know, I can stay young doing it.
Yeah, there's a couple of things you mentioned here which you know, stood out to me when I was doing a bit of research. One of them being time frame and story. So, you know, there some of the work, for example, that we'll be talking about today is quite short, and we're talking about a minute. But you were saying that, you know, there's no point in having a story that won't work in 30 seconds as well. And there's this sense of you know, having that challenge to develop that in a very short time frame. Does this still apply in how you view work and even, you know, judging the category?
I think it's one of the things that sticks out the most for me is time continuums, what works and how you tell stories in, you know, I put them into categories. I kind of ignore the 6 seconds. I don't even know what to do about that. But, you know, from 30 to, you know, 90, even 30 is very specifically different to 40, and 40 is very specifically different to 60. And what I'm noticing is now with the kind of more work that is kind of, it's amorphously moving from online to more traditional platforms, it's that people can get tripped up with that. And maybe actually historically they always could. Like, you'd get a script for a 30-second film, you think there's no way that will all fit in. That just won't work. You know, you get a script and they say, it's a very simple idea, and they say, we've got ambitions to make this into a 3-minute film for online. And I'm still thinking, how do I tell them that it doesn't need to be 3 minutes? You know, there's a sweet spot, basically. There's a sweet spot of the time length. You see it in feature films, over-length feature films, where you're going, that would have been fine at 2 hours. It didn't need to be 3. And I'm quite harsh on when people get it wrong. So there was a lot of work for me in the first part. I don't know about the other judges, but the first part where people were getting that wrong. So that there would be a no to me. And there is some work that we'll talk about that I think gets it just right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that we're starting to mention here is also the challenges and opportunities you see in tackling different narratives. So, you know, you're described as a creative risk taker. And so that sweet spot might be a little bit shorter than what a lot of people and creatives assume is, you know, perfect. So it's taking that risk to also, you know, for example, budget was something you just mentioned as well. So you can do quite a lot, and that requires you to be a lot more creative and have this confidence to, just do it. How's that applied in your work and what you do today?
I mean, I've always found that there's a correlation actually with some of my best work has been some of the most challenged budgets. I would like to say that I would like some of my best work to have the biggest budgets. So if anyone wants to like help me with that would be great. But there's a kind of, I don't know why that's happened in my career, but it has. And I think that sometimes you need a framework of restrictions to help you make those right decisions, and budget is one of them. And if you're given all the toys, that can actually become quite kind of like, that can be quite debilitating in some ways. My only problem, the difficulty I've found in like kind of taking this to a kind of point of judging and the perspective, for someone like D&AD whose standards are so high, is that where do you put the point of where craft is slightly suffering because they didn't quite have enough money? And that's tricky. That's a really tricky balance because you don't want to penalize work. I always say, like, you don't get to put the budget on the screen when you show the work. Unfortunately, you can't put your disclaimers up there for, oh, it would have been a bit better if we'd had a bit more time, we'd had a bit more money, we lost the main cast, the cast member that we really wanted, and if it had been him. None of that, matters at the point where we watch the piece. So, the ambition of the project or the idea has to be possible for the money you have. That's what I say to kind of younger actors. Like, you can't make that kind of work if you're on this budget, but you can do this kind of work really well. So that's what I tried to do. And of course, there's a correlation, I think, as well with budget and risk. As you said, it completely, the lower the budget, the more you're going under you can kind of slightly go under the radar. You can kind of Trojan horse something a little bit edgier, something a little bit more left field. People are going to maybe let you get away with more, less eyes on it. So there's pros and cons.
Absolutely. And something you're mentioning here as well is this risk requires confidence. So, that's the only thing that might stand in the way of delivering this great output. And sometimes having the small print of, oh, but we only had this budget means you weren't quite confident you were able to make it, or, it's about practice, right? And perseverance as well. So I really like that you're also talking about younger, kind of people you work with, because we might have young, creatives watching as well. So what's your advice for them? And it will lead me into some questions that we have already as well.
I think like the biggest thing that I can say is that if you're a young filmmaker and you're thinking, how am I ever going to get anyone to notice me or see me, is that it's because I think it's getting hard to stand out. There's been a little bit of democratization in the business because of like almost technology making, if there was these cameras or iPhone, or phones like you could film on when I was young, that these means that we don't have any excuses to create content, but how do you stand out? And how you stand out is trying to figure out what your voice is, and that sounds like a cliche. And when I was young, I was like, "What's my fucking? I don't know what my voice is," And it just takes time to find that. And every piece you do, every film you make gets you closer to figuring out what that is. So there's a period, I think some people get there quicker than others, but it's trying to find what your voice is, not looking at what other people have done and how great that is and how you could be a bit like that. Of course, there's a bit of that beginning, but after a while, it's also, I realized quite early on that I could never make really. And now I would say, a film like Bounce that did really well, Apple Bounce, right? It's brilliant. I say that now and I think, shit, now no one's going to send me something like that. Well, no one's going to send me something like that anyway, because I don't have that proof that I do that kind of technical work. And really, probably I'm not the best person for it, because that's probably not, that's not my forte. My forte is more cinematic storytelling, like you said, like actors, working with real people. So you figure out kind of what you're good at, like what your skills at, and don't try and like, just work to your strengths. Basic stuff, really.
Yeah, and you're talking about finding your voice, but that can also change, right? So there's a sense of constantly fine-tuning this, or do you feel that you're ever kind of set and I doubt you kind of wake up one morning and also say, I found it. Yeah, that's it, I'm done.
That's like when I had a dream. That's like when I had a dream once that I could sing like Aretha Franklin. It was like the best.
Oh, wow.
I know. And I woke up and sang one note, and this was this croaky crap voice. And I was like, damn.
You're falling from really high. You went for, quite not just the average singer.
I dropped far, So, I think that the other thing, that the problem is that, in this career as well, is that once you find your voice, the thing gets quite boring, is that people just think if it becomes too narrow, then you get offered the same thing over and over again, and you don't feel like you're really developing that or moving forward, or you feel like you're at some point you'll feel like you've done this before. You get this kind of like deja vu feeling, and you don't want to do that again. So yes, you're right. You're constantly just moving a little bit, and again, I think it's about confidence. I think it's about kind of feeling comfortable and relaxed in kind of what you do well, and then on top of that, putting yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone, and adding another challenge to it. Like, so I made a film for Facebook during lockdown. It was the challenge of doing something through. It was the challenge of going, God, could I do what I do with this process? And I'm not going to say how successful I thought it was really, but I think that it's looking for ways to change it up as well.
Yeah, and I like that you're mentioning being out of your comfort zone, because sometimes we have to force ourselves to change our voice or to try something else and take a risk. But right now, with the current situation, this comfort zone has been forced on a lot of people and creatives in the industry. And what change have you seen? For example, you just mentioned your project with Facebook and your work with them. So what's changing? What is going to be the new normal in this category and in direction?
I mean, I think there are some things that I think that we can take forward for the future, to realize that we don't need to be in a room at the same time, and we can use the technology to kind of shorthand some of the processes. For me, that doesn't mean probably the majority of filming itself. I want to be in a space with the people. I feel there's something very tangible about the energies of, not want to sound hippie, but like of people, and using your eyes and being in a space. That's the kind of background I come from. But we cast this film through through, I think that's possible through Zoom, and I'm doing some of that on another longer form project. Like, talking to people, meeting people this way is brilliant, because you could just keep saying, oh, I will be next time I'm in New York. You could say that for like 5 years and never go there, and never speak to that person. Or you can go and do this, and there's no, and also I think I've realized that as a control freak, there's ways to let go a little bit in some parts of the process. So, for instance, you could send some kind of other unit, for instance, you wanted that shot, but you didn't have the budget for it. There could be a small unit in that place that could do that, and you could still see it. That's what's, I think that those things are good. And the other thing is more of a cerebral kind of thought, or like that what this time, what this kind of period has given us is this, for me, is this feeling of time, and time being a kind of, again, like a strange thing, like precious but long, but but short, but the time continuum of the period, I think, was very strange. And going forward, I think that, I don't know if other people felt this, but like, it's like really thinking of it, like you had this time to think, and you thought, well, I think it's precious, and I only want to do things that I think are really meaningful, that I connect with, that I care about, that I really want to do, and I think that's something. I think in terms of going back to business, I hope that, the industry just kind of gets back, to shooting, just for all my friends, all the people I know, in all the crews that are, at home, not working, the development of the work, like the writing, script writing, the coming up with the ideas through the agencies, that's all fine. But the people that have to go and make that stuff, and are at home not doing that, I feel like it's gonna, for them, I want it to go.
Yeah, it's interesting to mention the idea of connection, because we're now very much isolated, it feels, in an industry where connection is actually really important, and real life experiences as well. And I'm thinking, going back to young creatives, I'm thinking about some of my friends in the industry, and networking and meeting people has been a huge part of kicking off their career and making sure they met this director at this moment, and kind of developing that and fine tuning their skills. So especially in a place like London, where we're seeing this creative community really bubble up, and very competitive. So connection might look very different in the next years.
I think for a while now, I mean, when I started, it was literally like, you had to go and sit at a lunch and kind of go, hello, and I think that's changed, like that's been a changing, evolving thing for quite a while, where we connect in different ways through social media. And, I think the young people are brilliant at that. I still think the kind of like, the email that drops into your inbox, which cares about what you do and tells you a little bit about what they do, can go a long way still, and then this way it's easier for me to say, I'll have a quick chat with someone if I can just do this for half an hour, rather than, let's meet for that coffee. It never works out. A lot of the times it's like you get busy, they get busy, I think, that in that way you can just jump on and just, you can still make those connections in this time, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a couple of people joining that I don't want to ignore here. So I just wanted to say hi to Julia, who's with us, Marcel, Yasunari as well, who really liked your work. I shared the link to the Bernardo's work you've done. And we also have a question from someone on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, join on Behance, because we'll be tracking all the questions on here. And the question is, what advice do you have for first-time narrative short directors? Is your philosophy for working with actors and collaboration in that way? Or what is your philosophy for working with actors and collaboration in that way?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the type of actor. And there's, you can read, and you can read lots of books and whatever about how to talk to actors, but it depends on the level of experience that the actor has and the kind of the part. And for me, in the end, talking to actors is about a human, just a conversation between two human beings. One thing you do have to impart is at what point in the story you are, so they clearly know where their headspace is in that storytelling at all times. But at the same time, to kind of access emotions that you might want them to access, it's about talking around that subject and going into the character rather than, I mean, I tend to like not want to over intellectualize things, basically, because I think like what comes from within, and when the performance is soulful or has heart, it comes from a different part of a person, and accessing that is just about, like I said, just making that human connection with that person. And the other the other important thing I think is trust. And for me, whoever I'm putting in front of a camera, I mean, I can be quite bombastic and tough, but whoever I'm putting in front of the camera, I take a lot of care for, and I feel quite protective of, because I think they're putting themselves out there. Doing this, I hate this. This whole being filmed. This is like very much out of my comfort zone. I don't like it. I feel very self-conscious. Well, can you imagine when you're a person in front of the camera and you're having to express emotions that are very, very difficult? That's about reading the signs, and understanding where that person is, and the levels of vulnerability. Because I deal with a lot of people that aren't massively experienced and they're young, so there's a lot of vulnerability there. So it's about protection of that, and you're in that position where you should, you need to kind of
I really like the way you approach this with kind of humanity and the sense of kind of, it's emotional intelligence and empathy for, who you're working with as well.
Yes.
Which is really much easier to say than actually achieving. Should we talk a little bit more about your experience judging as part of the D&AD Awards as well? Because you have some work that I really want to make sure we have time to cover that you've selected in terms of submissions. So what was your experience judging? How does it work? Tell a little bit more for the audience who might not be familiar with, the role of jury president, for example.
So there was, I think, 5 or 6 of us in the jury in the end, I think. And of course we were, because of this year, I think we would have been in a room. I've always enjoyed debate, and there was a bit of trepidation about how we were going to do it on Zoom, and whether it was going to work. And I'd heard stories of D&A juries being quite kind of emotional before from some friends, so I was kind of interested to know how that would play out with our jury, and whether it would. I think I loved the experience. It felt very. I hope that my other jury members felt that it felt quite democratic. Maybe with a small. My iron rod occasionally came out. I tried to like put it back, but I think I get to be the president. I get to like I've kept quiet over the years in juries before on things that I didn't think I should say and go against the majority. And I think that in this jury, everyone got to really say what they felt kind of like strongly about. So there is this level of debate about what makes, and some people are just working on a kind of like that kind of instinctual level again about, what made them feel something, what they kind of, what they cared about versus, and then you've got to bring in the other half of it, which is the slightly kind of, more surgical side, which is the craft. But is the craft up there? Is the originality there? And I thought I kind of knew what kind of president I was going to be, that I was going to be tough but fair, but not not too generous, because it's very.
This is your president voice coming in.
Yeah,
you found it. Yeah.
This was my president voice, which all went out the window when you go into the kind of D&AD world and you realise the levels of the creative excellence levels are higher than you even really had ever I'd always realized it, because I know I was bloody hard to get one, and for all these years doing it, I know that. But yeah, I didn't really interrogate that till doing this, and then I thought, wow, it's tough.
And did you see this level of debate coming into the Zoom meeting, instead of sitting? You said at the beginning that was one of your concerns or interest in seeing, bringing immersion to those calls as opposed to being in a room. Did that actually happen?
I think that did. Not a level of no one cried.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think there's a politeness, isn't there, with Zoom, where you're a bit worried about talking over each other, and I think that's maybe a good thing and a bad thing. I don't think it's good for some people, and good, it's definitely just a difference. But there was, because there were some pieces of work that were slightly contentious, where there were camps, and you kind of like, you can get quite like, I got this, like, your opinion. It's interesting because you can kind of you can get quite entrenched in your position, and you kind of want to win that battle. And other times you can be like, no, I feel like, okay, this is the consensus. This is what, this is, and I felt like for different jury members at different times, we went back and forth, but we were always quite fair. People in the end went, fair enough, if that's what, you guys think, or, vice versa. I'm being a bit esoteric, but yeah, there was, I think, and I think some of us got our minds changed about things. I think that's really interesting when you think you're absolutely sure about a piece, what you think about it, and then someone just says something which just chips away at your kind of your your position of, I'm absolutely sure that should get,
Yeah.
pointed that out, and there was a bit of that, and there was. It's mainly directors, but like also Charu, who's runs a post-production house. It was really good, and then Toby, who's a creative director at Droga, who really was good to have as well, because he's giving that kind of that a little bit that perspective of reminding us about the idea again, and what the director brought to it. He actually pointed out something that of course we all knew, but it's just good to hear it again, is that he could see where he felt that the direction was just servicing the idea pretty much, and lots of people could have, but also then suddenly once you start to look at the work, you could see the idea, he can see the idea written on paper, and how the director elevated the idea, took that idea and went, and just did things with it that were, amazing. And I think that's where levels of work,
And was there an example of work where that happened, and you had your mind changed, or do you have one that's kind of top of mind, where maybe there was a camp, or you felt very strongly about one of the submissions? And
well, I know
you had a list. Yeah.
I mean, overall, there was, what I enjoyed about what we had resonated with us to get us to the point of being in book, there was quite a lot of I don't know whether I don't think it was to do with the pandemic. I think that the jury were the type of people that cared about kind of social conscience, work that had a social conscience, or kind of work that we felt was doing something, had a message that was doing good, or maybe it was a little bit of that. I don't know, but a lot of work was coming through like that. And that's where we said again, like that craft thing at that point, say for instance on hope is power, there was, to be honest, it's a brilliantly simple idea, and some people thought it was brilliantly simply executed, but others didn't. So to get it, I mean, look, it's a brilliant piece of work. It did really well. It's championed and won. It got it's not a yellow, but yeah. So maybe we should watch it.
Yeah, I think it'd be a great one to watch, because just as a little lead up before we put on the video, I think something that you started mentioning and you had at the beginning as well about your own kind of work is that there's a very, the social conscience piece of all the submissions that you selected means that the involvement of the jury is very much a, emotional and visceral one. And this democratic kind of fair say that everyone on the jury has is also reflected in Hope is Power as a submission. So I think it's a really good transition. So it's actually, I was reading that this is by The Guardian or for The Guardian, and it's the first kind of campaign they've had in 7 years to kind of, showcase the mission of journalism. But I won't spoil it any further. Frank, if you have time to now show the video, we'll share that with the audience.
Why the struggle, why the strain? Why make trouble, why make scenes? Why go against the grain? Why swim upstream? It ain't no use. You're bound to lose. What's done is done. That's the way the river runs. So why get wet? Why break the sweat? Why waste your precious breath? Nothing changes, nothing changes, nothing.
Brilliant. So tell us a little bit more about the mission that's been presented here. And, obviously, I think the relevance of this in terms of media being in crisis is, brought to life. So yeah, tell us more about the way it's been tackled in this submission.
So it's a very simple idea about, and I didn't just watch it there, so I can't remember what the lyrics say, but it's an idea of the impossibility of something and not giving up, and it's a metaphor, isn't it, of just this butterfly that it could never, break through that glass, and then it does. And that moment where it does is actually quite, with the soundtrack, it's a very, as you said, it's a powerful kind of visceral moment that really got to people. It really got to members of the jury. Its simplicity, and ultimately its message. Where it kind of got stuck was at the point of trying to figure out, like in an advertising category, of more pure, would it have done better? I don't know, but in a craft category, there was a conversation about how much craft was brought to it. But is craft, craft isn't always adding more things. Craft is sometimes understanding, to keep things simple and to not add things. And so this debate was going back and forth a little bit about, well, the room is the room, but the choice of the room, the lighting in the room, then we started to get onto the post-production of it, because we're talking about craft. So if it's going to go all the way to the top, every single part of it has to be, and there was a comment about you know, and this is how harsh it got, and I'm sorry for this, but you know, it did, like, into how the glass breaks, you know, and how well that was done. And and once you start seeing that, then, you know, but what you can't take away from is when you first see that piece of work. You know, what you can't take away from is how it made you feel and what you're left thinking from it. So, you know, for me, any kind of mention with anything to do with the D&AD, you're a winner anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like, for me, you're in a very small category of work, you know, historically. So I feel good about, you know, where it went. But that is the reason, if anyone wanted to know, like, why it didn't go any higher. And I think some people did want it to. It was a bit of a split. I'm not going to say where I went.
It's really interesting to hear that, because craft is not only post-production, like you said. You know, something we haven't mentioned is audience. So, you know, what is expected, and, you know, from whom? So what do we feel as viewers when, you know, experiencing these narratives? And that's also part of the first time you watch it, like you said. And I think after a while you might have seen it so many times that you start dissecting it into, you know, a really granular level.
Yeah, we went pretty granular on it. Not, you know, but I think that brings me to the other piece that I think also does that in a really interesting way and caused quite a lot of debate, was Sandy Hook, which I personally think that was one of my absolute up there. I would have taken that higher possibly. That was the only piece that I might have done. Some people had a problem with it, and I can explain. Not a problem in where it got to, because it got very, you know, but it's a really good one to watch. It's a really good one because it also talks about advertising on another level. So we should probably have a look at that.
Definitely. And I'll introduce it just a little bit. It's quite a gripping angle, because I 100% agree with you, and that one really stuck with me in the submissions you sent over. And you know, it touches on US schooling and the reality of what back to school season brings in terms of new meaning. I'm not going to spoil the kind of turnaround it takes before we watch, but I think it presents quite a strong narrative in terms of, you know, what we expect in this commercial phase and season of the year, especially in the US. So let's play it and then have a chat about it.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I needed for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class.
These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
And I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
This one was really powerful. Can you tell us more around what caused debate? As you said, you know, this one could have seen go even higher in terms of you know, the messaging and what it brought to the category. So tell us more about the experience judging this.
I think, like, emotionally for me, you know, it kind of has this kind of postmodern angle of using, the genre of advertising, and then twist that to get its message across. I think that's just super smart. Draws you in that way. And then by the point of the girl being in the toilet cubicle at the end saying, "This is the fun," I mean, that absolutely got me. You know, I had goosebumps. I was just, you know, just her performance is just incredible. And I think that the control of the craft is quite outstanding as well. Like the way it takes that, absolutely, it takes those cliches. You know, I'm really interested in that genre subversion anyway. So it takes the cliches and it puts you in that space and then just starts to turn you. And if you actually look, it's turning probably from earlier than you actually thought. If you watch it again, you know, you do see something in the background of the second shot. someone running somewhere. Like there's little clues, so it seeds it brilliantly. I think that, and I don't want to speak for them, and maybe they'll be pissed off afterwards. There's a couple of people, a couple of directors on the jury that I think that they were disturbed by the style of this type of work. So two things. I think they were disturbed about the style of the work, as in the cheesiness of it just disturbed them, right? But that is the genre, but that kind of disturbed them somewhere. And also the performances, because you're taking, what's really interesting about casting is like, so when I cast like kids, I the classic thing you say is, I don't want the stage school kids. I don't want the kids that you always see for these castings. Weirdly, for this, I can imagine that, they might have been saying, we do want those kids. We do need those kids because we need the kids that those kind of, that genre would use. But then we need to, kind of bring them into this other world, this disturbing world of what happened to Sandy Hook. So it's that turning point for them. Maybe for some of them, there's a few performances that fall down. I felt that it transitioned brilliantly, and I felt that the girl's performance at the end is so phenomenal. But I was just gobsmacked by it, and I love the using the genre to get the message across instead of the kind of usual, this is a really awful thing. That's the other thing. It's like playing around with, and I think after the pandemic, it's going to be interesting to see the types of work that come out. I think we got quite sick quite quickly during lockdown of like, we care about you, because everything, like this kind of, this kind of slightly false tone of voice, and I think we get kind of desensitized to it quite quickly. So anytime I see it kind of, which is why, my Bernardo's work, anytime I see it subverted in a different way, I think it's a good.
I completely agree. I experienced it. The experience of watching it was exactly like yours for me. And when you mentioned the girl in the toilet, and it got me thinking about what you were saying with this postmodern interpretation too, in a very critical way, and the way our society works. I think back to school is often presented as consumption driven, right? It's go and purchase this, it's overly shining and perhaps quite superficial and fake, like you said, for a lot of brands. So this approach to reality felt, something that I hadn't seen before, and definitely memorable for me. But it's interesting to hear this tension with maybe the rest of the jury on how it's been, the kind of tone of voice or the way it's been presented and packaged in this submission. Another. Or any additional final thoughts on this one before we?
I was just thinking about actually, it's a trend that kind of like advertisers who would traditionally do this kind of like, bouncy kind of, that's what I said, kind of consumerist, become more serious, and charities and social, become, that's just a really weird flip. And I think like what's always been interesting to me about advertising is these kind of flips of like turning things on their head just when you don't expect. And I think that's how you keep work interesting, by taking the place where everyone thinks things are, and just flipping it or moving it one way or moving it the other, and that's what creates an originality in a postmodern world.
Yeah, going back to that, I feel like we're now just throwing buzzwords, though. Let's not be one of them.
Exactly. Don't even know what it means.
Yeah, should we start? Anyone in the audience watching, enlighten us on. No, but I think there is a kind of challenging, expectations and normality and the way society works. But it's a really interesting one. And when we were talking about post-production with the previous example, with The Guardian, it made me also think of the Wise Words submission, and just the way that tone of voice was brought forward, a very intimate, calm approach, which I felt was quite powerful. Can you tell us more about, was there any questions around this among the jury and this submission?
I think again, like that was a much loved piece. One of the reasons I think it's so interesting is that that you don't see, like in a position in our society, we don't see older men like the brilliant actor Peter Mullen that's in that spot. We don't see images of them with a baby. we don't see that we've never seen that. Like it's a very, it seems odd to say, unless you're a grandfather with a grandchild or something. In the media, you don't. So I think that was already a resting idea, and it could have been, and we don't know this for sure, but we were debating whether, the people that made it would know, whether the script was just whether when it was kind of put out to pitch, whether it was just a kind of a poem or a piece of writing, and you had to interpret it in a certain way, or was that kind of core idea, about I think it might have just been, do something with this, in which case the directors did something really brilliant with it. Again,
should we watch it?
Spoil it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Before let's just play it and then talk about it.
There was mixed reaction to the public.
Give me a call if you need anything, Dad.
Yeah, I'll see you later. Reaffirming a more fundamental split between the nation's towns and cities. There is a sense that these communities are being left behind, prompting calls for urgent change. Today we ask the question, is our nation more divided than ever before? Joining us now is the Council of...
You've arrived at a very interesting time, little one. We all hate, that's true enough. But then, we all love too. You too. We all think we're right. But we've all been wrong. We all laugh. We all cry. We all lose it sometimes. We all need to go. I know. We all try. We all fail. But we get up and give it another go. We all eat. We all drink. We all talk a lot of We all take our first breath. And we all breathe our last. We all take. We all give.
So what really worked on this one, Sarah, and the kind of simplicity of it?
Yeah, I'm keen. Just the literally again, and now I'm actually thinking, God, I just keep showing all the kind of like gritty, because actually they're not the pieces that won the yellow pencils. These are but we were all very drawn to this piece. We were all drawn. I think it is good to kind of celebrate. Actually, I'm pleased we're looking at them, because these two, this and the Hope is Power, they aren't like, I can't imagine that they were like, really big budget, films, but their heart is huge. In a way, it probably didn't get a yellow because of the messaging is brilliant. Don't believe in hate, but it's a message it's quite broad. So maybe the idea specifically has been done before, but like the thought of seeing, just listening to this man talking to this baby, I think that's, and done so beautifully with, it felt with an authentic, real understanding of what they were trying to say, I think, in terms of the craft. And they put themselves in the genre, and they did it beautifully. So that was good. And actually, unless you've got something to say about this, I was like, we should play something fun.
I know. I also thought we would cover these kind of heavier.
Yeah. And actually,
We'll end on a high, I'm sure. I mean, we're saving some really great ones as well. But I'm also really glad we're touching on these because, it is a heavy time and we're pulling from conversations that are really important. And we were having a chat before the stream about this. And we're seeing some really difficult conversations being tackled, but are important and keep on coming back every year and somehow never feel, I doubt we'll ever get to a stage where we feel they're solved in any way. This isn't a solvable kind of, situation. It's more a conversation that's worth having. And how will direction kind of tackle, and this category tackle these conversations that keep on growing in the next years, and make sure that they keep on being brought back. Maybe it's not about quality post-production, but more just approaching them in the first place.
I think that there are more ways for this kind of work to be seen, and I think there's more ways to share this kind of work. Traditionally, the charity commercial was something that you kind of worried that not that many people saw. Now I really think that, if something powerful is made and it touches, or, just like in the negative, when I was listening to this podcast about, all the celebrities singing Imagine, that was right, that was a tone deaf piece that didn't, and then it's shared in the don't do that, in the same way, the good work can be shared. And I think that I hope that we see, we keep seeing kind of an interest in, getting, these messages out there. And I believe that hopefully, I'm quite, I don't know, I feel quite positive at the moment about, what's happened, with Black Lives Matter and, Me Too, and that we are making incremental changes that still will take, however long, but, and this is a time we've just got, I feel like the door just opened enough for us to jam our foot in it. You jam your foot in it, you doesn't have to close. You just need to keep prizing it open a little bit more, and I think that the responsibility, it's not the responsibility of filmmakers or advertisers to be interested in these things, but there is a responsibility to I think be truthful, which is a strange thing to talk about in advertising, sometimes. But I think, you can make good advertising and you can be truthful. And if you're not truthful, I think there's ways you get found out quicker. So, I think,
That was exactly my next point. Brands do miss the mark, and at times in taking that risk and responsibility that doesn't feel truthful. So there's a risk to that as well. So it's interesting you mentioned that. And was there anything you felt was missing from this category that you didn't see, and maybe a conversation that wasn't touched on? Or, I guess we will talk about maybe the underdogs after this to bring a lighter topic to the table. But was there something that you feel wasn't there or didn't kind of surprise you?
I think that overall there's there was a strong kind of section of kind of classic kind of narrative storytelling, where underdogs will lean on that. There is also, actually, I really should have put Bounce on there as well, because that was actually a piece that really was just spoke to the jury all the way through. That was the least contentious piece, actually. Underdogs is even kind of contentious, but that was just, that just goes all the way through, because it's just so joyful. And I think that at some point, the craft is so fantastic, that you are a bit, wow, how did they do that? Plus the joyfulness, plus the, just that kind of effortlessness of the performance. And, a lot of work went into that, but it doesn't look like that. The great thing about it doesn't look like it. So, I think, what's my train of thought now? But, that was, so what, no, so yeah, what I was going to say was, maybe what was missing was it just, I think people are a little bit scared. We've just got to go through this period of, basically, we're scared of what we can say and what we can't say, because we're scared of getting it wrong. So for me, the risk taking could be, we've gone a bit safe, and I think we argue and discuss our ways out of things rather than into things. Like we say, no, we can't do that, I can't say that, we all do it because we're all a little bit like, so we've got to figure out, like, our position in this world, and I feel like, being someone that's always liked a bit of, to be a bit kind of bit of an agitator in some ways, annoyingly, I think that's what we should just be a little bit less afraid, to just to shake it up a little bit. And especially, and this goes to the top, this is really like clients, like, you know, really kind of finding a position, you know, where they can feel like they could do that, which has foundations, you know. But that's the thing, you know, in the end, the 2 yellow pencils were both Apple, and part of me was like, I wasn't sure whether, you know, like, you know, but because they're throwing the rule book out about what a brand is and what they can do. They're saying we can do this kind of work, we can do that kind of work, we can do a piece like this, we can do a piece like that. It just really opens it up for creatives. I mean, in the end, the 2 pieces are quite, I would say they were more the Hollywood of you know, and you know, I can be a fan of Hollywood, whereas, you know, the Wise Words is more the indie, you know, the indie film, where I maybe feel like a little bit more, and maybe mix those worlds up a bit more, like we said, like back to schools for Sandy Hook. It's quite slick, you know, just mess around a little bit more with the genres. And I think a brand like Apple should be celebrated, because you can see that they are pretty, like, they're one of the lead, they're one of the advertisers that seems to be the least scared.
Yeah, and actually could also be risking in you know, being such a big brand. But let's talk about the Underdogs as the final piece, and we're ending on quite a high note. Because as you said, this one was an interesting one to me, because for a different reason, it was different for Apple. I always remember what they used to do back in the day with, you know, Apple Nano, the iPod Nano, and, you know, where ads were very kind of heavy, high energy, like music heavy and upbeat, very graphic. And there wasn't much storytelling at all. It was very much or focused on the user or the viewer. It was more about kind of this condensed creativity in 20 seconds, which felt you felt energized, but there wasn't much, you know, it was very different from what is being presented here. So what was different to you, and what do you think Apple has had to change?
I think Apple's ambition is what I'm impressed with, you know. I mean, obviously they have the finances, but I'm just impressed with their ambition to explain what their products do, but, you know, in different and unusual ways, from something like, you know, Bounce, which is, you know, for the iPod, you know, which is such a technical kind of no narrative, to the Underdogs, which is a, you know, I think I'm happy it's up there, because it champions longer form. It champions the idea of, you know, getting into a story, meeting some characters and going on a journey with them. And into that, you know, quite brilliantly, it puts the product itself. So the product is completely integral to the whole film, yet doesn't feel forced. And I think that is a very difficult balance to get that right. And I think, you know, the creative and the marketing side obviously just work that very well. And then from a direction point of view, again, like to work that time continuum, to get that pace, to tell those, you know, you're making an ensemble film, an ensemble short film of however many, like 5 characters, and you feel like you got to know a little bit about each one of them. Not a lot, because it's so short, but you went back to their home lives. You know, they were archetypes, but they were archetypes done in a really like, just in a way that I think that whoever was involved in making it loved those characters, and the warmth that I felt for them was, I think, you know, it came across. You know, it really came across, and just the storytelling. You know, doing what that film does is actually very difficult. It's difficult to do, and I think they did it wonderfully, because it's just it's entertaining, right?
So we just have, you know, a couple minutes to show it. Let's just play it now before we run out of time, and we'll talk about it after.
Guys, I just got us a meeting with Vivian.
What? How?
I just bumped into her.
And what, you just asked for a meeting?
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do?
Actually.
When?
Just now.
No, when's the meeting?
Oh, Thursday, 8 a.m.
Next Thursday?
Yes.
No, this Thursday.
What? That's impossible.
We can do this, okay? Round box is back.
It's just a sketch. That's all we have.
2 days? We need 2 weeks.
This is how we get off this floor.
Dave, can you get some sales figures on pizza boxes?
I feel sick.
It's so simple. Round pizza, round box. Perfect.
Hey, who's hungry?
We have to prove what's wrong with pizza boxes.
They're square.
Wasted space.
Yeah.
Do I really have to go see Mike in finance?
Yep.
Hey, Mike. I was wondering if you could send me this
Inbox.
We have this idea. We need some sort of 3D prototype.
I gotta pick up the kids.
I just want to get you all together. We need to find a name for the box.
Roundabout.
Squircle?
Circle box?
Who's that? Hey, Siri, turn on Do Not Disturb. Brian.
I'm awake!
Hey, Siri, tell Bridget I'm running late.
No. This is wrong. This is all wrong.
Dave, can you please double check those figures for us?
Did anyone hear from Ed in warehouse?
He's putting together the prototype now.
What are you guys working on?
Nothing.
Nothing. Move that over there.
Make that title bigger.
Guys!
We're almost there.
You know how it works. I mean, I don't even...
What are you doing, bud? Hey, can I have that back?
I'll email you the video.
Just airdrop it to me.
Sweet. You guys, I just got the prototype.
Whoa. This is gonna look so good in the presentation.
Awesome.
Wow.
I'm awake.
It's time.
Did anyone press a button?
Genius. Tell us. You were just telling us how much work went into this. Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, it's the look. So we're just saying it's like so entertaining, so much fun to watch. Sometimes you just want to watch a fun, funny film. But yeah, when I look at the individual shots from a directing point of view, and I think about how they had to do it, shoot all of that, I'm like, yeah, it's a lot of work.
And I feel we have you to appreciate that, but sometimes as an audience, we're a little bit ungrateful of how much work went into
doesn't matter.
these missions.
Yeah. You don't have to worry about that, though. That's the important thing. Yeah.
That's true. So any final words? We're wrapping up and coming up to time. Actually, we saved this for just the end, and we have some people who are joining now, and it's sadly just about to end, but you can watch on replay. But just any final words for maybe young creators are joining, inspiration for the category, and how the next couple of end of the year or couple of months, we might not look beyond that, are going to be panning out.
I just think I'm just interested in young people kind of not being afraid to put themselves out there. They've got different unique ways of seeing the world, so they need to express the world in that way, not in the way that they think that other people want to express. We're looking for people, advertisers and clients and stuff. They're always looking for new perspectives. So young people from all different backgrounds, and with the range diversity that we should show this world in, should go out there, make stuff, and get it out there.
Brilliant. I think everyone at home is now inspired and a little bit emotional. I saw in the chat from some of the submissions that we showed today. So I hope we ended up on a high, and you can still see all of the rest on the D&AD website and all the different awards and submissions that have been put out there. But thank you so much, Sara, for today. It's been really great having you and chatting away.
I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone, and see you next Thursday for another session presenting the D&AD Awards. Bye.
I'm going to go.